Well, that's the power of being a creative in this time, right? To be able to process your own experience and to be able to make something out of it in a way that people can take the emotion, take the message, and interpret it, even though you're going through this struggle. And I think it's a perfect time. Akil, I really want to talk about your project, Historians. When I first saw it, I literally looped it, played it again and again. It was so beautiful, powerful, the imagery, the quality, the message. What is it that inspired you to write this, and what place did you have to be in to be able to access everything you were going through and pen it to paper?
It's interesting that you ask what place I had to be in, because the point of the actual end product and what it ended up giving was a bunch of light, right? Like the film is about hope, but it actually came from a situation and a mind and thought process that was complete darkness, because it was right after George Floyd was murdered, and I was sitting down. The marches, in which were called riots, were happening, and there was just this huge amount of weight on me, in which I'm kind of feeling like tired. Like a situation like this happens, you're mad. It happens, you're sad. It happens, you're tired. And then it's just on cycle consistently. And I'm sitting there just tired. Like what is there left to do? Because if this isn't enough, like what is it going to take? And in that moment of hopelessness is where I ended up writing. Now, I wrote it, it ended up being more than what it was intended to be, because first and foremost, we didn't want to capitalize or make profit off of Black deaths. We thought that was very important. Like, there are definitely times in which artists take very bad situations and quickly try and use it as almost if it's trendy. But I definitely wanted to get a message out. Like, that was the sole purpose of the creation. And after I put out that message, other creatives had reached out. Fabio, he was the first one. Fabio from Hollowed Grounds. We work a lot together, our two production companies, and he was like, "Can we make more of this?" When he had said that, I was wondering, like, how so? Because I already didn't think I wanted to. But then as more creatives came to and they were like, "Can we make more of this?" We ended up kind of thinking to amplify what the actual story was. Because if you create something in a prettier package, people want to listen to it more and it's easier for it to get around. And that's what we ended up doing. And a whole initiative was started out of that. And I think, kind of going back to what Jesse was saying about everyone's eyes opening, I feel like this is actually a crucial time for creatives to be making that work. And the reason that it's important to be making that work right now is because everyone finally noticed. Everyone is finally listening. Now is probably the most support we've seen from different cultures and different ethnicities ever before. Like, I think about if my ancestors were to look at this right now, like how much this would mean to them to see other cultures standing there with us, right? And I think to myself, it's also very important for us as creatives to be continuing this right now, because we are on the precipice of change, right? We've finally gotten all these people to look, and we don't want it to end as a trend. Like, we don't want the end of 2020 where people were actually looking to be like, oh, for companies and such, this is important right now. We should talk about this right now, and then it dies down, and they're like, okay, now let's go back to our normal programming. Like, we want to make sure we continue to push the narrative, to push the story, and continue to have people looking at these melanated voices that need to be amplified, so that way we can finally get to what we've been shooting for the entire time. So this is definitely a very important time in history, and this could really be the turning point for our own future.
It really does feel like the first time conversations about race can be had so openly outside of Black History Month. It really does feel like it's the first time we're having these conversations for more than a month. And I'm sure all of us can relate to going through school and having an understanding or learning or feeling as though our origin story as Black people was slavery, and how that, you know, could impact the way that we move about the world and the way that we grow up thinking about the things that we can do. But thankfully, because of more creators in the space, what is being taught in schools is different. What people and, you know, young children believe about their potential is different. But there's something to be said about owning and understanding our history to be able to write a new future and set a new target. Kashmir, I know you've got a really interesting perspective just in learning more about your deeply rooted film. And you're being seventh generation Canadian. I would love to understand, how has your own history, both culturally and where you're from in Halifax, informed the work that you create?
Um, I mean, how it's informed the work that I create is like, I always tell people, like, as artists, our main job is we emulate human emotion, right? And we do that through our own experiences, our own voices that we connect to. And me being Black Canadian in the sense where my roots are different than like Toronto, a city where the majority of the Black people that live here in this day and age are first, second, third, leaning more transitioning into fourth generation Canadian, you know? So people ask you, where are you from? You say you're from Toronto, you're from Canada. The next question is going to be, where are your parents from? Likely a lot of y'all, it's going to be, my parents are from the Caribbean, Africa, somewhere like that. My answer is always going to be Canada. And then they ask my grandparents, where are they from? Canada. Next, they keep on going to the point where I'm like, they're like, you just don't get it. And I'm like, where are you really from? Like, no, you don't get it. Like, and in my documentary, when I did it in 2017, the research that we had done, we learned that I was at least seventh generation, but we've now learned that I'm more like eighth or ninth generation. So I'm telling people, like, you don't understand, like, I'm a eighth generation Canadian. My family's been here for over 200 years, you know, like, what would you call me? I'm Canadian. Like, where are you from? Don't ask me where I'm from. Where are you from? You know? And for me, what that means is like, what we learn for February as Black history, we learn all these facts. We learn that we were slaves. We came from Africa. They brought us over here, put us on some ships, spread us all over the place. And then we were slaves for a while. And then there's this big gap that they sort of always skip in the history books, which is what they don't teach us in school, right? Because their excuse is, well, it's only a month. We didn't get to that part yet. But for me, it's like, in Halifax and in Nova Scotia, where I come from, all of us, that we don't just spend 1 month, because that's who we are. It's part of our history. Like, you want to know, I want to know what my grandfather was like. What was his life? Well, he was in the military. Why was he in the military? Because his father was in the military. His father fought in World War I and World War II as a Black man, you know, and he was in the military because his father. So that's like my great, great, great grandfather in the military. I'm already learning these things that people don't know, that there were Black people in Canada fighting in the military, and before even the World War. You, like, Black people have been fighting for Canada military since the War of 1812. But those are the things that they don't teach you in the history books. But those are things that I have always known, because it's part of who I am. So when I create art that reflects my Black experience, my Black voice, I can only carry those things on my shoulders to put that message and that experience across. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think as you tell your stories and others do, it's finally a time where we can start to see Black people doing normal things. I love some of your commentary, just, you know, you being tasked with doing commercials and TV. And it always seems that brands are surprised to know that, you know, Black people use your products. They are regular consumers in, you know, the same way that we all are. And it's just a matter of, like we said, like ignorance in the true sense of the word, right? Not having visibility, not seeing people, not hearing these stories. Really
Yeah.
creates a narrative that's damaging, right?
It just is like that, you know, like we were saying in that conversation, like, you know, as a Black director, you know, in commercial world, people, like, companies will come to me when they have those products they know Black people will use. You know what I mean? If it's a urban brand or something like that, like, oh, it's an urban brand, we need to get that Black director. But like, you know, why can't I do, you know, the curling commercials? You know what I mean? Like, why don't you go to the black person for that? Like in my documentary, I say like, we're Canadian, my family, 8, 9 generations. So my mom plays curling and she's a black woman. Her skin is just as brown as the next of ours. You know what I mean? So it's like, you mean, you can't tell me black people don't play curling, because I know a bunch of them that play curling, right? So why can't that black director do curling? They don't think of us in that way because they don't, the imagery of us is not there. You know, I was saying to you in that conversation, like this whole issue with like race, systemic racism, all these things, a big part of it is that, for which sucks, is a majority of these people, they don't see us as human. You know what I mean? And I say, in this day and age, how can they even begin to see us as human if we're not ever being shown as human? In my world, film and television, like, you know, most movies are always about the black struggle. It's either about slavery, you know what I mean? Or it's about Jim Crow, civil rights era struggle again, or even now in current times, it's about, you know, struggle. It's about cops killing black people, which is an important message that needs to get out there, but it's still about struggle. And I'm like, but black people don't go on family vacation like all these other white people in movies that you're showing me, you know, like black people don't go on couples retreats like all these other movies that you're showing me, like these dramas. Black people don't fall in love, like black people don't do any of these things. Black people don't retire, you know what I mean? Like, show old people, I was retired, what am I going to do with my life now, you know? But it's like, you know, I got a bunch of aunts and uncles that just retired. They in that same stage. I see it all the time, right? And I just say, like, they can't see us as human if we don't start showing us doing human things. If all they ever see us doing is struggling and being treated like animals in cages and stuff, that's all they're ever going to see us as, you know? So I feel it's part of my duty in this day and age. And just like Akil was saying, all like last year, you know, you went through your stages, like you were angry, you were sad, and then at some point you were tired. And for me, it was frustrated. And then I looked to a point like, okay, so what am I gonna do about that? Like, what is my role in all of this, you know? And as a filmmaker and a storyteller, I'm realized like my role is to tell that struggle and that life through stories in the best way I can, you know what I mean? And that's to, like I said, it's not always about making movies about our struggle, which are important, but there's another issue. Somebody needs to start showing us living so they can see us living, and then maybe they'll picture that black man's life, you know what I mean, when they stopped them at a stoplight for some stupid stuff, you know what I'm saying? So
Well, it's a
Can I
really cool
bounce off
thing.
of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, going off of what Cash was saying, sorry to interrupt, Chloe,
No, no.
but I also find as a Black creative in the area of Toronto, there is a lot of opportunity for a lot of multiculturalism in terms of the creative arts. However, at the same time, there are definitely certain companies and certain places in which you can get niched. It was before I started with directing and stuff, I was doing a lot of acting before I had gone to school for acting. And then I had gotten an audition, and I go for the audition, and I remember it was for this agent, and then he was like, yo, I can get you into a film like immediately once you win me trust. And I was like, say word. And he was saying, I'm gonna be honest with you, because I did my performance, and he was like, we can see if you can do better. And he was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's basically between you and this other guy. And I'm like, oh, who's this other guy? And he shows me this picture, and it's basically this Black guy who looked basically just like me, right? And I was like, oh. And he was like, we only really need, because you know how in film or TV and stuff, there's the token Black. He's like, I really only need a person who fits your description. So that way, when there is a casting call for that, I'm always sending out this person. So really, we're looking to find someone to fit into that status quo, but like, we don't really want all of y'all. We just need like someone for that. And then that's the same thing, kind of like how Cash was saying with production work too. Like all of a sudden you will find out that people you could have been working with the whole time, they hit you up when it's the Black History Month special, you know what I'm saying? And then after February, they don't hit you up again for a year. But there were plenty of other jobs that were coming in that they went to other directors for.